Hi, I'm Dennis Wilson. For over 50 years, Delta Dental of New Jersey has been committed to educating the public about the importance of good oral health and its role in our overall health and well-being. That's why we're proud to support the important healthcare programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community. New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey. Healing begins here. Valley Bank. The Russell Berry Foundation. Delta Dental of New Jersey. Everyone deserves a healthy smile. And by the Turrell Fund, supporting right from the start NJ. Promotional support provided by New Jersey Family Magazine and NJFamily.com. And by NJ.com. Small news, big news, true Jersey.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at it.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. This is One-on-One. We're at the Tisch WNET studio in the heart of Lincoln Center. It's my pleasure to introduce two very special guests. Ali Torre is the president. Jennifer Herbert is the director of clinical services of the Joe Torre Safe at Home Foundation. I want to welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Ali, let me ask you this. We've talked to Joe Torre many times, different golf outings and public events. He's been in the studio with us. About his personal experience with domestic violence. His dad was a cop in New York City?
New York City police officer.
And his mom was abused by his dad.
Correct.
And Joe had siblings, they were around, and they dealt with that. They experienced that.
Yes. Silently.
Silently.
Yes.
And how the heck did you, I know Joe has often said that you got him to talk about this, which then led to this organization being created. How did you get him to talk about it?
Well, we went through a seminar called Life Success right before we were ready to have our daughter, and they created a safe environment and a comfortable environment where he was able to do some meditation and reflect on what was going on in his life in the past. And he went home that night and called his sister and said, "Did Dad hit Mom?" And it was then that he started, understanding all of these nervousness, this like insecurity, and these feelings that he had kept within, not knowing where that came from. But once he started speaking about it, it was the beginning of the healing process for him. And then this all led to our foundation with the commitment that, let's end this cycle. No child should have to live under these circumstances.
And one of the things that's always struck me is explain what Margaret's room is.
Margaret's Place is a safe...
Margaret's Place, I apologize.
Margaret's Place is a safe room in a school.
Named after?
Named after Joe's mother, Margaret. Right. And the school provides us with the space where all our services take place. And in that room is really a holistic blend of services, preventive services, intervention services for the whole school. So kids can come and have clinical services, individual counseling and group counseling. They can also be part of a peer leadership program. They can take part in other school-wide programming, school-wide campaigns. They can get involved in a number of different ways, supporting their friends and supporting students in the school.
I'm often struck by this. By the way, what we're putting up as we see pictures of what goes on at the foundation. We're going to put up the website again. I'm curious about this. You talked about Joe not talking about it. Do you still, even today, as we go into 2019, there are a significant number of children, of women in these situations that, quote, don't talk about it?
That's
still.
Correct. That's correct. Yes. So it's something that in our society is really not that accepted. It's kind of this ugly issue. Many people think, well, what happens behind the home, closed doors at the home, that's their business. But the reality is there's so many children that as you said, for every woman that goes into a shelter, 2 to 3 children maybe go with her. And it's not just women that are being hurt. It's like there's verbal abuse, emotional abuse. And the reality is that children that are living in these environments have the same type of dysfunction later in their life as it's really a form of child abuse. And so we are trying to address that. We work with the students. Students and adolescents are at the age where they're now starting to discover who they are outside of their family. And if you're living in an environment like that, it becomes very normalized. So the mission is to end the cycle because they don't even know if they're being abused, that's not normal. And so by giving them that safe space in a non-judgmental, confidential area,
Right.
then they can start talking about it and they're like, oh, so now they have choices. So what we do is we give them a safety plan. Number one is to keep them safe. We give them coping strategies. How are you going to deal with this? And
Sure.
And giving them the opportunity, if they want to talk to somebody about it, they can. And then also to be an advocate for other students that are out there going through similar situations. Or there's just so many layers to it that there's cyber abuse, there's sexual assault, child abuse. So we really provide that safety net for these children that are in these school situations that might not have any type of other services available for them.
The other thing that's fascinating to me is because Joe is such a public figure and an iconic figure in the sports world, there are professional athletes, as we speak, many sports, who are accused of, and they have in fact engaged in domestic violence against their loved ones, particularly the women in their lives. When a Joe Torre is out there speaking the way he is, to what degree does it have the potential with professional athletes to have them be more aware of their responsibility here?
I think that Joe is such a role model, I think, not just for our students, but for the communities that we
He sure is.
That we serve in New York as a whole, that it really makes a profound statement, I think, when he stands up and speaks about his experience.
And not just for athletes, but what about for children who, well, they're like, that's Joe Torre. You don't have to be a Yankee fan, but that's Joe Torre. He's a big, strong man who's accomplished these great things. But you talked about him feeling insecure, having vulnerability, having anxiety, largely a product of those childhood experiences.
Absolutely, absolutely. He did not have the confidence to go out for his baseball team in high school. He hated school. He just did not feel good about himself. So that's a very typical pattern of someone. He was hiding. He was hiding. He said he had the opportunity to hide as playing baseball. But there are many children out there that do not have that opportunity. And so that's what we do. We try to provide that support for them and guide them. And by the way, it's very much in denial. Even the parents that are involved in a domestic violence situation,
That's right.
The majority of them have no idea what effect it is having on their children. And so we not only have our programs in schools, but we do speak to parents and we do speak to teachers, and we have parent-teacher workshops. And so our goal is to get people aware of the fact that this is a very serious situation in this country.
Absolutely. And by the way, I should let folks know that to disclose this part of it, every year I'm proud to host a golf outing that the folks at Cohen Resnick, one of the accounting firms, one of the largest in the nation, our good friend Frank Longobardi there, the CEO, very much involved. When I host that event, half of the proceeds of that golf outing go to the Safe at Home Foundation. The other one goes to the Special Warriors Operations Foundation at Yankee Stadium. People know that for children of those who have been lost fighting for our country. So it's such a great cause, and that's how we've gotten to know the Safe at Home Foundation. I want to thank both of you for joining us. You've made an important contribution. We appreciate it. Stay right there. This is one-on-one, but in this case, one-on-two. We'll be right back right after this.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you King Kong.
God, there she is. That's talent. That's Christiani Pitts. She is in King Kong on Broadway, playing at the Broadway Theater, 1861 Broadway. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Describe this. What's it like for you to see that?
It's overwhelming. It's cool now. At first, it was overwhelming. Now I just feel really cool and proud of it. But when I first saw it, I cried.
And we're doing this show toward the end of 2018. You started early in November, right? Mm-hmm. First night. You're out there.
Amazing.
It's you. You're breaking all kinds of, you're the first African-American woman to play this role.
Yeah.
What's it like?
It's amazing. I mean, it's like you don't realize that you're sort of representing a large group of young ladies who want to see themselves on stage until you're doing it. And then you get a lot of love from people who want to do this, want to be in shows like this. So it's the best feeling in the world. It really is.
Now, King Kong, what was the year? Help me on this, guys. What was the year? King Kong, 1930s?
1930s, yeah, that it came out.
Okay, so it's a million different King Kong iterations, right? And now this. Mm-hmm. As I was reading about your background, your family, that makes it even more special.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I'm from the South. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
And I moved to New Jersey, but my roots are very Southern.
Montclair, New Jersey, my hometown.
Yeah.
We can claim you?
Yeah, you can. Oh, yeah. I love Montclair.
So does Atlanta, by the way. A lot of people are claiming you right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But so I'm from the South, so it means a lot to me to sort of be a Black woman from the South who came to New York City to pursue her dreams in the early 2000s, to sort of represent a woman who did that in the 1930s, because it was a much bolder move for her to have done it back then than for me to do it now. So it's an honor to play with it every night. And like you said, King Kong came out in the 30s, but it's clearly very special because it's been redone, over 15 times.
Right.
There's a new movie coming out soon, Skull Island, part 2, if you will. So it's special. It's special. People really care about it. So it's nice that we're keeping it going.
It's interesting. Debut on Broadway, Bronx Tale? Okay,
Oh, yeah.
You were saying you played Jane. Mm-hmm. Now, for those of you, I'm going to disclose this. I did not see the play. I saw the movie 58 times.
Yeah.
Jane is what a powerful role.
Yeah.
And you work with Chaz Palminteri. Mm-hmm. What was it like?
It was a blessing. I mean, like you said, it was my Broadway debut, so I was terrified. And I see that my team is Robert De Niro and Chaz Palminteri and Jerry Zaks, heavy hitters.
Yep.
Tommy Mottola was my producer, so I was terrified. But what a way to start. You know what I mean?
Right.
To start with some of the best in the game was such a great confidence boost and a great learning experience to sort of watch the way they moved. And Chaz is still like a great mentor to me now, and I'm hoping that he's proud when he sees.
Sure he is.
Yeah.
Sure he is. When you first came to New York, mm-hmm. you're trying out for all kinds of roles.
Yeah.
I imagine you're not getting a lot of roles.
Oh yeah.
I often ask this of people who are in your profession. Mm-hmm. I mean, we deal with some rejection in the media
Right.
and broadcasting.
Right.
You deal with a lot of rejection. How do you deal with it?
I prayed. I have a really strong faith, and I prayed about it because I've known since I was little that this is what I want to do.
How young?
3 years old I started singing.
Seriously?
Oh yeah.
All right.
5, I was in the church choir, so I'm like committed. So I just prayed about it, and I knew that if I didn't get all this rejection, I wouldn't know what it felt like to be celebrated. I wouldn't appreciate it. But now this success, if you will, I cherish it so much because it was not easy. But I built a tough skin, and I prayed about it, and I started to write my own work so that if someone else didn't want me, I could create roles for myself. Yeah.
Can you tell me about Kong?
Oh.
Describe Kong physically, particularly in this highly technological age we live in.
He is majestic.
How big?
He is 20 feet tall, and he is 2,000 pounds.
2,000 pounds. Put it over here, because I'm looking at Kong. What was...
He's magnificent. He's truly... I mean, look, I look like a little pea compared to him.
The challenges working with that thing.
The challenge really is to not feel as though I have to be larger than life to compete with him, which was one thing I was nervous about, was that I had to sort of make big choices, and that's not the case. I just have to sort of be myself, and it's okay to be small compared to him, because the audience sort of leans in, everyone's watching the show like this to see me and see how I interact with him. So the challenge really is just sort of staying truthfully little and not being worried about being sort of overshadowed or taken over by this majestic beast.
So this gets a great run. I tell you, we're going to try to bring our daughter, who's 10. You said it's okay, appropriate for 10-year-old?
Yeah, oh my goodness, it's great.
Okay.
They'll love it.
I hate when people ask this, but I'm doing it anyway.
No, no worries.
After this, you have a great run. Do you think about what's next, or does what is ever going to be next come to you?
You know, I think about the possibilities of next, but I try to stay as invested in the now as I possibly can.
Present.
Oh yeah, but I do say though that after
right.
working with a 2,000-pound beast, whatever is next, I can't wait to see, because it's got to be something huge.
Well, listen, we wish you nothing but the best. We congratulate
Thank you so much.
I know that Atlanta claims you, Montclair, New Jersey claims you,
Thank
Broadway
you.
claims you.
Yes.
Christiani Pitts in
Yes.
King Kong on Broadway. Broadway Theater, 1861 Broadway. We wish you all good things. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You got it.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are, in fact, at the NJEA Convention, the 165th NJEA Convention. We're here with the keynote speaker. We're honored to be joined by Jacqueline Woodson, New York Times bestselling author. And as I said, the keynote speaker here, your 2014 novel, 2014 book, if you will, Brown Girl Dreaming, is much of the reason why you are here today. You are not just a great author, you are someone who was nationally recognized recently by the Library of Congress. The actual title as an ambassador is?
National Ambassador for Young People's Literature.
Which means?
That I'm the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, and I get to go around the country and basically preach the gospel of reading and writing, and get people to connect around literature, get people to really think about the impact that books have on their lives, on our lives, and have conversations. My platform is Reading equals hope times change, because I believe
Say it
that
again, reading equals?
Reading equals hope times change. It's a mathematical equation, but it's not. It's a
beautiful.
Reading equation. Thank you. And I think that reading changes us. I think reading gives us hope. I think we read to find that hope, and I think the conversations we have when we read and after we read are really important to a bigger dialogue.
You know, I've mentioned this before. Our daughter, Olivia, happens to be 8 and loves to read, but I see she's distracted, along with millions of other kids, by the iPad that I try to tell her she's so fortunate to even have. Technology and reading. Is there a conflict there?
You know, I think it's still content, right? People are still accessing content. They're still having to read to get to their different things on their devices. I think, you know, when you look at ebooks, when you look at the way young people read by listening to books on their phones, so audio books, right? They're still engaging in literature. It's in a different way. I mean, I think, yeah, we do have a lot more quote-unquote distractions, but I think the heart of being able to come to a story, and in these days, there are different ways of coming to it. It's not just the actual book, which is what I love because I'm old school. But kids are still coming to stories. Kids are still really appreciating story. They still love to be read to. And maybe it seems to us like they're reading less. I don't think they are. My kids, you know, have their devices and they have their library, they have their books, and I feel like I see them going back and forth between
They're not
both.
mutually exclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
Reading for you as a kid, when did you know that you loved reading?
I always loved reading. I mean, I grew up in a very literary family.
Where?
I grew up in Brooklyn. And my mom, we had library cards. We went to the library every day after school. It was always something. The religion we grew up in was text-based, so there was a lot of reading. But I was a really slow reader. I read differently than a lot of kids read. And I think people didn't understand that, right? that okay, here's a lover of reading, but why is she reading so slowly? And why is she, quote unquote, struggling with reading? Looking back on it, I wasn't struggling. I was reading like a writer. I was reading slowly.
Reading like a writer.
Yeah, I was.
Can you explain that to those of us who've never written a novel or a memoir?
But who have to be tested on reading, right? So you have reading comprehension. You did the standardized test, and there's a way in which you have to read deeply, and you have to get a deeper understanding to be a writer, right? You have to understand how the author makes you feel a certain way. When you have a setting, it's like, how did I just get into this room, right? How do I know how this room smells? And it's a really deep, slow gathering of information from the narrative, and that's how I was reading as a young person. I didn't know that was reading like a writer. I didn't know I was reading as a deeply engaged reader. I thought I was just reading not as fast as other young people. And I think it's one of the really important things I've learned as ambassador, as a writer, is when teachers tell kids they have to read faster. It's like, no, it took me 4 years to write that book. Read it slowly.
Take your time.
Yeah, and really engage in the narrative. And I think it does make a difference in how we understand.
The topics that you write about, you have covered a whole range of complex, difficult, but incredibly important issues in society. You at any point you say, maybe I won't take this on. You just took it on.
Yeah.
Because?
I write realistic fiction, and I think I would be lying to society. I think I'd be lying to the people who the narrative is important to. I think I'd be lying to myself to try to create this kind of homogenous society where all of these different ways of being don't exist. And I write about what's important. I write about what was missing in my own childhood reading. I write about stuff that I know young people need to hear about. I write about incarceration. We live in a country that's dealing with mass incarceration, that's dealing with the school-to-prison pipeline, that's dealing with all these young kids, all these young people who know someone who's incarcerated and don't have a book that they can go to and say, wow, this kid is like me. I'm not the only one like this.
Or what about prisoners reentering society and not being prepared to do that, which
exactly.
is a massive issue.
It's a huge issue. I write about that. In Harbor Me, the girl's dad has just gotten out of a long incarceration, and it's like, who am I? Where am I? Technology has changed. The world has changed while I was gone away. And I always say I write because I have questions, not because I have answers, right? But I think what literature allows us to do is ask those questions and begin to think about those questions on a grander scale.
You love writing.
I love writing.
And that curiosity that you just talked about, you're curious about just about everything in society.
Yeah, I am. I can't imagine not that. Aren't you?
I am, and it's one of the reasons why this job is a blessing, is a gift. And what I'm interested in is how much of your curiosity, in fact, comes from the reading you did as a kid. Not that there's a quantitative way to measure that, but I've got to believe that you're more curious because of that passion.
I think it's a good point because you learn about other people through reading, which makes you more curious. I think it also came from, I was born in Ohio. I moved to South Carolina. From South Carolina, I moved to New York City. My family was Jehovah's Witness and Muslim. I think, my family is also interracial. I think there are a lot of ways in which I was constantly and this, and what about this? And wow, look at that. And not taking anything as a, quote, norm, right? So I think curious people don't. They, instead of saying this is how it is,
you're
they're
open to different views of the world, which is atypical for lots of folks who believe what they believe and read things that reinforce what they believe and don't bring me anything that may challenge what I believe.
I've never understood that. So.
Same here, and it's scary. I don't mean to get into the whole thing about political discourse, but I will say, when people refuse to or are unable to read or be exposed to anything else besides what they think they believe, they're just gonna keep believing that and not even challenge it. That's not you.
No. I think there's always room to learn and listen and grow. And even for the people I deeply disagree with, right? I need to understand what they're believing and thinking about, so I have a way of examining it and questioning it and understanding it.
Or even
whether or
why
not,
they think that.
Yeah. And I think once I understand, like I think about someone who's really cruel, right? Or really a bully, and it's like, oh, this person probably got bullied in their life. This person's probably deeply insecure, and that insecurity complex is manifesting as a superiority complex. Like, but it is that constant, not intellectualizing, but asking the bigger questions.
And you also write about bullying.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I know the keynote presentation is a big deal. That's a big deal, right?
It's fun. I mean, there was a great audience, so it's I don't know, a big deal in terms of.
It's significant because people were looking forward to hearing you, and the folks watching on public broadcasting appreciate listening to you as well. And you honor us by joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Our pleasure.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, New Jersey Sharing Network, Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey, Valley Bank, the Russell Berry Foundation, Delta Dental of New Jersey, and by the Turrell Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Every year, thousands of senior citizens are abused, neglected, or taken advantage of financially. Elder abuse can happen in many places, and seniors may not recognize they are being abused or may not feel comfortable coming forward. Raising the level of awareness of elder abuse is key to protecting our seniors, so understanding the warning signs of abuse is important. Be aware of changes in daily patterns, finances, and changes in appearance. If you think someone is being abused, please contact your local Adult Protective Services unit or local authorities to get help right away.